I'd like to introduce Amy McNeil. Amy is the head of digital marketing for FCA. Come on up, any chair will do, any chair will do. Tomai Saremba, who is the head of marketing and digital and media for Ford. And then Lee Nadler. Lee is the digital marketing and launch manager for Mini. Thank you guys for joining us today. It's fantastic. We originally, and the topic that we wanted to focus on was targeting. When we think about and I'll use a lot of this vernacular over and over, so forgive me for the redundancy, but when we think of consumer fragmentation, and when we think about the various, television, programmatic, digital, out of home, all of that, and we start thinking about some of those consumer sets, millennials, moms, that are a little more challenging to find, targeting was a theme we really wanted to talk about and how each of your brands are doing that. However, as I chatted with each of you, it became very apparent to me that with all of the technology, we'll incorporate it, but targeting is just the first step. It really is a way to find them. It's you're building segments, you're doing things with data, but now it's really more about engaging with those. Once you find them, how do you engage with them? How do you make FCA or Ford or Mini part of the conversation? And then what really blew my mind a little bit is maintaining that contact, but also humanizing the experience. So it's not, in this day and age, it's not enough just to find them. It's really about how you lay out how you're going to engage and keep the conversation going. So the first question that I would love each of Amy, I'm just going to kind of go down the side here, is when you think of, and this is just kind of setting the stage, when you think of in the past, it can be in the past year or whenever, what do you think has been your most successful campaign, digital campaign, or something that you're most proud of that FCA has put out to date or done to date? It doesn't have to be digital necessarily, but something that you're extremely proud about or something you'd like to focus on.
I think if I think back, we've had a lot of great campaigns over the past year. We've launched Renegade, we've launched 500X, just recently Pacifica. But it's kind of the foundational layers that we build underneath it. So what we've been most proud of in the past year is our approach to video.
Yeah.
So knowing that broadcast hasn't gotten cheaper, and understanding that scale is what we're looking for,
sure,
and reaching a younger, more affluent audience, I think it's been our approach to video that we've been most proud of. We buy it in 3 different segments. We take a look at validating our audience with direct buys that complement what's on broadcast. We then look for a light TV viewer, so we do a mix of direct partnerships with that, knowing that that's going to deliver on demo. And then we take a look programmatically about that in-market customer and what kind of creative that we need to deliver to them. So I think what I've been most proud of is our ability to scale, grow our audience, deliver on a younger audience, and then also deliver on the metrics of viewability, completion rate, and on demo.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. And we'll actually segue into a clip of that you guys put together in a little bit when we kind of talk about the engagement aspect of it. Tomai, same kind of question for you. Pride, what you feel like, anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, so over the last 12 months, we've done a lot of things that really stand out for me that I'm very proud of. One thing in particular is we built and it goes a bit before the 12 months, but we've done a lot of work in the last 12 there. We've built a content studio, is what I like to call it, whose job it is to connect with very specific audiences. So as an auto vertical, we have a lot of teams that are built against nameplates, and their job is to make inroads on those nameplates, right? Move sales, move share, move favorable opinion. But we took and instead focused teams on very specific audiences. So instead of it being your job to sell an F-Series, it is your job to connect with women, or it is your job to connect with millennials. And the work coming from that group feels very, very different than the work coming from the rest of the organization. Mind you, the largest majority of the work still comes from the rest of the organization because we're testing and learning on this side and seeing what that feels like. And it's also harder to tie that to a bottom line because you're making a bet, right? You're taking a risk, you're making a bet, but I'm extremely proud of our work there. And on the other hand, with the 90% of the team that's focused on the core business, we launched F-Series this last year, which was massive, massive launch for us. It's core to the company. It's core to our DNA. It's key to the bottom line. And F-Series has been a sales leader for almost 40 years. And so that's one we take incredibly seriously. And why I bring it up here and what I'm super proud of is we are so tight on what that vehicle is, who that target customer is, and what is important to them, that when we go through those launch plans for F-Series, there's never a question on, is this the right thing to do or not? And I actually wish we could get all of our other initiatives to mirror that, right? Not only do we know who the guy is, and I can say it, we call him our bold guardian, but like we know the guy smells like he just ate hot dogs from Home Depot. We know him that deeply, you know what I mean? And it makes it much easier to connect with him because we know exactly what's important to him.
I always walk by the hot dog stand at Home Depot. It's cash only, and I never have cash on me. So, but I'm definitely going to make a point now to do that.
Yeah, that's why you don't do it.
Exactly, cash only. Thank you. That's a great answer. So, Lee, you and I were talking earlier, and you've got a great video that I'd like to tee up. Do you want to intro it and we can show it, or do you want to talk to it afterwards? When we do that.
Yeah, I'll tee it up a little bit. First of all, you're asking about things that you're proud of. So
yes.
I'm going to share a campaign that we launched just recently with really kind of taking a different approach for Mini. Mini is definitely a brand that has kind of built a reputation both overseas in Europe, but then here in the United States in the last 15 years. Do we have any Mini owners in the house, by the way? I always like to ask that. Thank you. Hey. Come see me afterwards. Cool. He doesn't smell like hot dogs from Home Depot. We guarantee it.
That's a good thing, by the way, I want to say.
We, anecdotally, Steve Larson over there, he has to buy a Mini, so he's actually looking for any kind of discount or any kind of deal we can get here. So.
There you go. All right. Wow. All right. What's it going to take to get you in? All right. So first of all, I want to answer a couple of ways. One is in some ways most proud for being on the board of the Ad Club. So I want to thank all of you, as Gina did, for being here today. This club exists like for these kind of opportunities to be able to network and learn from each other. And I joined early on in my career and happy to still be involved. I'm proud of my daughter who just turned 13, which is why anytime you invite me to an event at night, I'll go, because I can't deal with being home right now. But then I'm also most proud of this campaign that we recently launched, and just to set it up, because I think it's a bit of a dramatic departure for some things that we've done in the past, is that Mini, as I mentioned, is kind of known for having a bit more of a cheeky attitude, if you will, and I think a lot of people know that it's a fun car to drive. If you haven't been in a Mini, you'd be surprised by the size of the Mini. You'd also be surprised now, as we've started to evolve under the BMW group, of how premium the car is. And so what we needed to do, we actually took a real look in the mirror, and we recognized, which I'll talk about a little bit later, we have a lot of Mini owners who, in some cases, we call Miniacs, like they're really into it. And about half of our owners actually name their cars, and like there's something going on there that's very deep in terms of the relationship there. But then there are people who don't consider a Mini. And we took a hard look at why they didn't consider a Mini, and some of it was size, and some of it was maybe they thought it was too cute, or maybe they thought, that's for when I'm younger in my career. Now that I'm a little more established, this isn't for me. So we created this campaign, and I'll talk about how we orchestrated it after you take a quick look.
This is a chick car.
This is a short man's car.
This is a cute car.
Slow car.
This is a single young professional car.
This car has no street cred. This car ain't hip-hop.
Kidless.
Cute.
Small.
This car doesn't care what you call it.
That's awesome.
Oh, thanks. So,
Harvey Keitel.
yeah, Harvey was an interesting one to work with. we had to ask him about 5 times to walk off. He's like, I don't want to walk off. Yeah. So it's hard to get Mr. Wolf to do anything. Yeah. Pretty fucking please, now do it. Yeah. Which is his line from Pulp Fiction. But, that campaign, what you see here is a 30-second clip, and I think part of what we're all here to talk about, and hopefully we'll all share some stories and anecdotes, is really like, especially interesting coming off of 3 days of the upfronts and 2 weeks ago with the new fronts, like the channels are really converging in really interesting ways. And I think we all know that, right? But then the question is like, how do you, to your point, engage with someone and connect with someone? And we've kind of taken a look at this campaign in particular, and we had a few key goals. One was to try to basically defy those labels that people have. It's too small. It's a chick car. What better way than to get Serena Williams, like to say it's a chick car? All of those people have and now do own a Mini as well. Randy Johnson used to drive it to Yankee Stadium, the big unit, 6'10". He now just bought a new Mini, and he bought the 2-door hardtop, which is fantastic. So it is bigger than you think. But what we really try to do is have a conversation with people. And so it's one thing on the Super Bowl to launch and get a big spike, and we actually started things out with YouTube mastheads, which was a great way to introduce the campaign, and then we went with PR, and what we really started to do is orchestrate a conversation. And you don't know how things are going to go, right? But you try to put things out there and then have enough interactions and content to be able to follow up with that. And I think that was kind of one of the great things that we were able to learn from, and we didn't do everything perfectly, but we set ourselves up for a conversation as opposed to something happens and now we've got nothing. We created, I think it was 22 pieces of content out of that one shoot. And then sometimes some magical things happen. So if you saw T-Pain, first of all, when I met him, I showed him the new car, the new Clubman, and he has a Countryman right now. And I said, what do you think of your Mini? And he said, it's my favorite of my 34 cars. All right, you're my man. And then we had him deliver the line, this car ain't hip hop. And then we kind of just said to him, because we knew we'd do some social and so forth, we said, just, do the line in your own way. Like, just stand there and do the line. We got what we need. Let's see what you got. And so he did this, and we cut this quickie.
This car ain't hip. Hop, 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 hop.
So we had over 20 pieces of content that literally we then got to give essentially to the talent and let them stir a conversation also, and then had things based on reactions and what we could follow up with. So I think, everyone's talking content, everyone's talking multi-screen and all that, but providing yourself with an opportunity to have a conversation is something we've learned.
That's awesome. That's a great, I love that video. And I think just seeing, again, I'm a huge Harvey, I keep fixating on Harvey Keitel. I'm a big Harvey Keitel guy, and it's just awesome. Very, very cool. Quick technology check. The clock over here is not working, and I love to ramble, so if we can reset that and make sure it's functional, that would be fabulous, and so we don't run over time, and make sure
Trying to give me a hint, shut up.
No, it's good. I wanted to, did you bribe them a little bit, Lee, to turn the clock off?
Stop the clock.
So I want to, in thinking about the timing, Amy, what do you most, when you think about marketing going on a go-forward basis, so we talked a little bit about what you've done and what you're proud of. What do you, when we think about targeting and engaging in all of that, what is something that you're most excited about? It could be a platform relationship. It can be a you came away from CES and saw something amazing, whatever it may be. Driverless cars have already been discussed, so we're going to have to take that off the table potentially. But what are you most, from a marketing perspective, what are you most excited about to either engage with or utilize as you build out your plans on a go-forward basis?
Oh, wow. So we always take a look at our plans. We have 6 brands, and so those are 6 mouths to feed. And every brand is very distinct, and it has its own identity. To your point, the man who smells like hot dogs. We we too have those same personas and sometimes even several within the same brands. So first we start with, okay, what is the audience that we're trying to reach and what's the best way to do it? I think what I'm most excited about, and I know that we've been talking about mobile for a really long time, but I feel like the opportunity to set and define the standards in which we go forward with mobile is what I'm most excited about.
Okay.
So, what is the role? How do you give attribution? Where does it fit in the consumer journey? And that's what we're trying to figure out, because it can introduce a brand, it can assist in a conversion, and it can close a deal. But how do you string that along with your video and your search and your display and your content studios that you are developing, and how do you get the right content, the right distribution, and the right KPIs? Because we're not seeing people on our end convert in the same way that we're used to
Right.
on a desktop. Great, it's 100% viewable within mobile for video,
Right.
but did you reach who you were intending, and did that assist in a conversion that you were looking at later? So as we
So
start to
is it verification necessarily, or is it attribution that's more, or do they go hand in hand?
I think it goes hand in hand.
Okay.
And I think that's why you start to work with partners that have that one-to-one relationship. You're starting to give value to that impression. So when you're working with somebody who has login data, when you're looking at those types of partners that can show you that you distributed an impression and that there was a conversion later on,
Yep.
I think that's when I get excited. And then how do you take that data and string it throughout the entire customer journey?
Okay.
So for us, that's what we're working towards next, and where we think the value is going to be, because
like
it goes all the way down to location and foot traffic.
Interesting, interesting. Tony, same kind of question. What are you, when you think about where Ford is making bets, or how you're envisioning again, staying with the fragmentation theme of consumers are everywhere and they're consuming it. It's not just a box up on the wall anymore. It's multiple paths. What are you most excited about that you're focusing on as you think about the digital marketing plans, or any marketing plans, but digital in this world on a go-forward basis?
So I'll give two answers if I can. On the
Sure.
digital specific side, I feel like the data and the platforms have all come to a place where they are really, really sharp at identifying who it is you're talking to, what it is that they're doing, what action they're going to take. And so mid to lower funnel, as we in the car business would call it,
Yeah.
people who are past awareness, past favorable opinion, and down into consideration and really starting to shop, those tools are so sharp that we're incredibly focused on what it is we're doing to maximize the amount of people we're pulling out of the funnel and into our ownership cycle. So I'm really excited by what we can do there, which is a lot of things that we have to put in place, right? Cross-screen has to be solved. We feel like we're getting into a really good place with solving cross-environment. Understanding one consistent metric across all of the platforms and all of the ecospheres, we feel like we've developed one that lets us compare platform to platform, something that's been impossible to do. So those types of sharpening and honing our skills I feel really good about. On a broader macro marketer level, even outside of auto, I'm both excited by and scared by the same thing. I feel like we're at a crossroads as an industry, as a marketing organization, as an advertising organization with consumers, right? They are increasingly driving toward ad-free environments. Where does that go? I don't know. What excites me about that? I think it's going to force us all as an industry to start to really provide value in our communications, which is going to make us all much more efficient and effective. I think we have to challenge ourselves. We are the reason that things are going to ad-free environments. All of us collectively have cluttered television, we've cluttered digital, and if you think about what we've created there, it's time. Consumers are saying that's enough, right? And now there are options for content where I don't have to engage here. So it's really going to force us as marketers to become much sharper in what we do and much more effective and efficient at who we message and when we message them.
I think that's interesting. I mean, we could have a whole panel on ad blocking and how that's going to impact how we're marketing. I want to be conscious of time because we have some great videos. And I want to pivot now to thinking about the engaging, the humanizing, and the maintaining. Amy, we're going to tee up the video. Do you want to intro your clip, or do you want to run it and kind of talk to a little bit about, under the auspices of how you maintain contact and the work that FCA has done to go, like, again, we're all assuming that with technology today, the targeting and reaching people, we can do that.
Right.
Then it's going a little bit beyond that from keeping the conversation going, engaging, and then really building those people in through the creative that you've developed.
Well, what we talk about a lot on the digital standpoint, FCA is really great at storytelling. We've had some iconic spots over the years. They've really, really resonated with consumers. So when my team and I sit down and we talk about, here's the advertising campaign, we talk about what is the next line in the story that we want to tell.
Yep.
And then we look at the partners that we have on the media plans and what purpose and what role do those partners serve and how are we constantly engaging. I think we talked about how there's 19 different touch points before somebody finally converts. Well, we're seeing multiple impressions that we have to deliver through some of our partners that we use for attribution before someone converts.
Yep.
So it's how do you get the right message in the right format on the right platform, but then continuously tell a story along the way. And what we tried to do in this clip is show you a couple of different examples of how we get to that.
Great. Ed, can you tee it up and then turn the volume up a little bit too, please? Thanks. Inner badass. I think that pretty much says it right there. That's awesome. That's fantastic. So pulling that, I noticed a bunch. You had mobile and everything in there. So, but to your point,
It was very purposeful for each execution. So you saw similar campaigns. You saw Pacifica in there, but you also saw we utilized Dad Brand within a parenting blog. But then we used a mobile 360 and information on how to use the Stone Go seats and the vacuums within a mobile execution. Like, we really, really try and be very specific. We've been running for Dodge, Dodge Brothers, we call it 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Like, we've continually told that story in broadcast, but how do you bring that to life within true video format? And my huge team worked really, really hard to figure out, okay, what do those extensions look like, and how do we make them more purposeful? So you can see there's several campaigns there, even down to the Gopher with Fiat, and we extended that into Snow Your Wool as a campaign online. But Snow Your Wool then became very product feature specific, and that's what we try and do on mobile.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. Tony, so you and I chatted last night, and we've got some videos that we're going to tee up. And it's important when we talk about the targeting, and we were looking through some of the things that we wanted to talk about and focus on. Millennials are obviously a tough crowd. So we have you've got a clip, and I don't want to steal it, but how that resonates with the group is really exciting. And then, without giving away what the still and what it'll look like, tying into a day and tying into something unique. So if you can kind of tee it up,
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
you want to tee it up or do you want to show it, then talk about
Let me
that.
talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
So earlier when I mentioned Content Studio and dedicating it toward audiences, the first clip you're going to see is what happens when you do that. What happens when you tell someone to connect with an audience as opposed to selling or marketing a nameplate. And you'll see how it feels incredibly different from other work that we do. This was targeted toward millennials, but we all say the word millennials as if they're this homogenous group that all share the same traits. Within millennials is this crazy amount of subsets, right? So we've even pushed ourselves to start getting deeper and deeper and creating smaller and smaller pieces of content to resonate really deeply with small audiences. And that's what this first one is. So if we can run that.
Now the that you have summoned me, what are your 3 wishes?
Well, first, we want a car that has an audio system from Sony for listening to our favorite tunes.
Yeah, tunes.
Okay, got it.
Second, we want another car, but this one comes with a rear view camera so you can see where you're going when you reverse.
Actually, you can get both of those things in
Finally, a third car with an EPA estimated 42 highway miles per gallon in case we need to drive around Planet Namek finding the Dragon Balls again.
No, all of those features are either standard or available with the Ford Focus. You've just used one wish.
Yeah, those are our 3 wishes. 3 different cars with 3
Enough! I'm just giving you the Ford Focus.
It's beautiful.
So crazy out there, but if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, they went crazy over this. We actually put very little paid behind this, and it took off on its own because they shared it with one another. They were like, holy crap, Ford did this? Look at it. And so with a small group, really, really resonated. And that's the kind of the stuff we're pushing ourselves to do. And then I think it's important not only who do you speak to, but when do you speak to them? And so we brought an example. We push ourselves to try to enter the cultural thread of conversation where it is appropriate. It's also important as a brand to know when not to enter cultural conversations where there is no place for you. So we're very, very specific about that. I wish we had more time to talk about that because I have a great example. But this is Back to the Future Day, which happened October. So, sorry, a little bit past the 6-month window you guys asked for, but I thought it was really important to show.
It's great. I mean, it was such a huge lead up, and you saw everything like October, was it 15th or 25th, 1985 is when they traveled back in time. Awesome.
Right, and so here we are, Back to the Future Day. If we can show the first still, this is what we just posted in social. We have several executions. I think there was one that showed the Mustang of then and the Mustang of now. Do we have that, the next? No, okay. So we showed the Mustang of then, the Mustang of now, and then the other really cool thing we did for the true enthusiasts, we actually built a flux capacitor into our build and price tool.
Tell me if there you go, you've got the Mustang.
Yep, thank you. And then next, we actually built the flux capacitor into our build and price tool. So if you were a consumer that day who was shopping for a vehicle and trying to build and spec out their vehicle, we actually gave you the ability to put a flux capacitor in. And that cost us very little. But consumers talked about it and loved it. So I think we have to push ourselves not just on the who are we talking to, what are we saying to them, but when are we saying it.
How many, just out of curiosity, because I know Bob built like 4 with flux capacitors in it. How many people actually built it, if you know, like?
I don't, because we didn't measure it. I mean, clearly you couldn't get all the way to
purchasing a car with a flux capacitor.
Correct, yeah.
Which would have been awesome. That's fantastic. Going back to Dragon Ball Z very quickly, where did you primarily?
Social.
Social?
Yeah, we seeded that in social, and then we let them take it.
Got it. That's
we
fantastic.
let the fans carry it.
So Lee, coming to you, and again, we've got a still that I want to bring up and have you talk through, and we think about tying in and being part of the crowd and that engagement. Do you want to talk through a little bit about, do you want to pop the still up and kind of walk through it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, this is a map, and it shows some places that Minnie is going to be exploring this summer. We actually start July 9th in Atlanta and end about 2 weeks later on the West Coast in Palm Springs. And what this shows is we have a program that we've done now 5 times. We do it every other year. It's called Minnie Takes the States. If you look at minnietakesthestates.com. And really what it's doing is, while all of us are talking about the importance of digital and ways to connect and so forth, this is a real world connection with our owners who we don't do focus groups and get behind two-way mirrors with M&Ms. We go out on the road. And we'll probably have about 5,000 owners come along the journey with us. About 1,000 of them will go the entire distance. People are already making plans and shipping their cars and trucking and getting their own hotels and so forth. And every morning you wake up and see about 1,000 Minis in a parking lot. No 2 of them are the same, which is pretty incredible. And then we set out on about a 6 to 8 hour drive on amazing back roads to the next destination. We usually have a fun surprise along the way. And then in the evening, we do something fun together and really take the time out and explore the country together, do something that most people don't have the time to do anymore, but really actually build relationships between this amazing community of owners, and then all of us at the company go out on the road and spend time with our owners. And one other piece, more than just kind of having a fun road trip and enjoying each other's companies, we also do things with a purpose. So we motor with a purpose. Last year, or last time, 2 years ago, we did something to support Best Friends, which is for animal adoption. Many of our owners love and have cats and dogs, so I think we had 180 pets come with us last time. This time we're teaming up to support Feeding America and working with them to help to continue what we did with Defying Labels. We're going to try and help shed a light on hunger in America and help to hopefully defy hunger in some ways, both by making donations and contributions and also getting the word out there through the power of this amazing community. So I think, it's an example of taking, what we're all trying to do, and I think, we have to keep getting focused on that last little movement in digital and so forth, but don't forget to spend time with your customers. Don't forget to get to know them. Don't forget to talk to them like face to face and try and share an experience together.
I think that's awesome. Lee, you may have mentioned this, but how many times is it, 2016, how many years have you done this historically?
So we do it every 2 years because
Okay.
it takes about a year to plan, but
Wow.
this will be our 6th time doing it.
How have you seen from the first time to now the growth?
It's, it's, monumental in a couple of ways. One, the word gets out and also we get more and more sophisticated at how we do it, but I think also because of over the last 12 years how social has started to really ramp up and engage with people, this is the way that people are starting to find out about it. The mini owners set up their own social groups around this as soon as the last one ended 2 years ago, and started pleading with us to do it again, and they're all lobbying for different sites to go to. But the question becomes you could just let that stuff happen, or you could try to, and I think this is what I would encourage us as marketers to do, and this is how we work with partners also. We try and really figure out what kind of platforms and tools can we put into the hands of our owners to let them not only have the best experience, but communicate about it in a way where they're sharing stories and they're also having an engaging conversation with each other and with us.
It's so, as vendors, and again, I think this would apply to everybody, we get caught up in let's get the deal done and sign the digital deal, and I think it's so enlightening and empowering to see how, listen, we're going to have our day jobs, but in being able to help the humanizing and engaging and doing that as part of the broader partnership that we bring together, I think it's fantastic. I appreciate, I'm actually going to cut it a little bit short because I think we're going to have a pretty active, unless Alicia's going to kill me, because I think we're going to have an active Q&A, but I'm speechless at what you've shared today, and I can't thank you enough for coming up here and opening it up and showing the things you've done and what you're proud of and what you feel best about. So with that, unless I called it too early, but we'd love to get some Q&A going. I know many of you work with this panel up here all the time. I'd love to draw out some questions from folks and really see if we can have a good dialogue in the next 10, 15 minutes we have. Raise your hand. There are microphones all over the place. The young ladies will come by.
In the first discussion, you mentioned that the
Can you turn it up a little bit? Sorry. Yeah.
That the dealerships are more regional now. That was a comment in the first discussion you had.
With Adam, yes.
Yes. Is that a big factor? And does, I'm thinking of the customer being, returning to the, to have the car serviced and all of that business with the, where they bought the car.
So, Adam, you want to kind of, or any of the panelists thinking about the dealer relationship?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Sure.
So the dealer relationship, I think, is a huge factor in the auto industry, right? Because we're at a point where we are trying to transition from getting the consumer, the whole car business, and I think all of you know this, is built from the instant you get a signal from the consumer, it was our job to drive that consumer into the dealership.
Correct.
And the whole world has flipped to now it is our job to get our vehicles to that consumer. And every system and every technology we have in place is built to go the other way. So the dealer experience and what our dealers become is pivotal to going back to what the consumers are driving, which is don't try to drive me to the store you want to drive me to, bring your cars to me. Does that answer your question? Yeah. And so everything we're doing is trying to engineer the process back to the consumer is at the center of it instead of the dealers at the center of it.
Got a question up here? Young man in the front.
Thank you for all the information today. I heard a divergent message from Lee and Tobias where you said you wanted to unqualify the car, right? Leave it to the consumer to define what the car was to them. And on the other hand, it's a very targeted, and by the way, I own F-150. I don't smell like hot dogs. Right? But when I bought my F-150, 5 of my friends, including my son's godfather, my father, all went and bought Ford trucks.
Yep.
But I don't feel that the brand speaks to me. All right? And I've worked with the brand. That's what compelled me to buy it. So how do you reconcile that between the two, where you're opening it up to the consumer and you're saying we're hyper-targeted and focused because we know who that consumer is, and you're not always leaving opportunity for exploration and discovery?
Come to Minnie, I'll show you some love.
It's okay. So I think we're getting more hyper-targeted. I think it would be remiss to paint the picture that we aren't speaking to masses. There isn't anything we aren't covering. There isn't any base we aren't covering. In getting more and more hyper-targeted, I feel we're readying ourselves for the future. I don't feel our capabilities are there to speak to every audience now. I honestly, if I were perfectly candid, and I think a lot of my counterparts would share the same challenges, we've spent a ton of time and a ton of investment building platforms that allow us to find targeted consumers, that allow us to be able to deliver to targeted consumers and measure those targeted consumers, but our production processes have not caught up, and that's one of the biggest challenges we face. We do not know as an industry, as an auto industry, because our budgets have always been so flush, how to walk in the room and create a campaign for anything less than $1 million. Like, we don't know how to turn on the lights without spending $1 million, and that's a huge challenge for us, going from that to really small pieces of content that we can have volumes of to try to connect more and more with groups and individuals.
And I think those micro moments are becoming a little more easier to adapt to. Our CMO had given us an assignment where he said, I want to create a space outside of the traditional segment and tender, and I want to give people a permission to look at our vehicles in a different way. So what he wanted to look at was, what is that lifestyle moment when your buddy gets a new truck and you kind of like that? Where does that buddy talk about it, and how do we insert ourselves into that conversation? And I think that the platforms are just getting there in order for us to do it. We wanted to talk about milestone birthdays within Facebook. Well, they could target the entire decade. They couldn't target that 50-year-old human being. So I think while we're getting there and we understand that the automotive segment is not going to grow anymore, we've hit our peak where we need to now steal share from each other.
Yeah.
And that means we have to adopt this lens of a new segment consumer. So like with F-150 and Ram, we know that we cannibalize from our own portfolio. We move people up and into them, but we're also stealing share from small SUVs, from people that are coming from sedans. So how do we develop the messaging that resonates with them, and how do we find the partners that can help us target those kinds of pools of people? Because we want to beat each other to that person before they raise their hand and visit an endemic site. We want to talk to them well before that. And I think that's where we're all moving towards. But
We're not there yet.
We're not there
We're
yet.
not there yet.
But we're all identifying these moments. I think Google is in our face with, these are micro moments, and here's the targeting. Well, what is the messaging? How do we create a converter? And that's what we've been talking about. Yep.
Gentleman in the back.
You guys talked a lot about content across screens. Could you maybe talk to some examples about content across the funnel and the importance of retaining creativity from everything from the higher level awareness stuff down to some of that more feature and benefit level pieces, and how that connects back to some of your campaigns?
I mean, if you take a look at our Renegade campaign, I think everybody in this room feels like that campaign started with a song, and it did. So when ex-ambassadors hit the marketplace with Renegade, and then that started a conversation with a new audience that we weren't typically able to speak to. We then integrated that into our TVC, but then we had different video content that carried the next line in that story too, where we were targeting people with that kind of Renegade type message. We integrated within different video partners and platforms where we created custom what it meant to be a renegade, where the song wasn't a part of that, but it was more about that feeling. And those are some of the campaigns that we're most proud of, is when you take that idea and you're able to scale it, but you have to look at every single channel and say, how is this supposed to look, feel, and sound?
I would say, to answer your cross-funnel question, it's actually a really simple mantra that we force into everything we do. We ask ourselves, whether we're doing the tier 1 beautiful branding work all the way down to that very, very last click, we ask ourselves, and then what? And then what do I want the customer to do? So they just saw this beautiful brand spot, and then what do I want them to do? Oh, they came to my website, then what do I want them to do? And we force ourselves to actually map out the journey across the entire thing and make sure we're building the content to meet those points of intersection with the customer. But those words reign into everything we do. There isn't a campaign, an initiative, a program, anything that's brought into my office where I don't ask the team, and then what? Then what do you want the customer to do? And that helps stitch it all together for us. Does that answer your question?
There's been a lot of buzzwords thrown around in the last couple of years. You have native, you have programmatic, mobile viewability, things like that. And even on top of that, you see this disconnect between straight branding and then programmatic. And that kind of leads to a lot of these big companies buying up the smaller companies, a lot of shrinking in the market where you have these one-stop shops, just chasing the market and trying to capture up these buzzwords. As, people who lead these giant digital organizations, what are you actually looking for from your digital publishers to really wow you and move to that next level?
For some of the people who are in the room that we work with, they know that when they come into Mini and use buzzwords, they're actually written down and scored on how many times they use those buzzwords.
We play bingo with them.
Yeah.
We really do.
So it's funny that you kind of tap into that, but it sounds like we all kind of play with that. And, I think listen, whether we're sitting on, this side of the stage or whatever side of the room you're coming from, we're all in this marketing industry together trying to figure this thing out, right? And I actually think it's one of the most exciting times to be in this business, especially whether you're on the digital side or I manage the traditional side as well. But back in the day, I worked at DoubleClick when it was first launching in '96 and the beginning of commercialization of the web, and we're still using the same buzzwords as we are now, of building those one-to-one relationships and all that. The tools are so much more sophisticated right now that I think what we have to get into, and I like your point, and I use some different words, but it is about, and then what? If you can try and map it out, and show us where you kind of fit in the process of our customers going through this exploration, if you will. I don't really talk about the funnel anymore. The funnel is non-linear.
Full of spaghetti.
Yeah, people are moving all over the place. You guys talked about it earlier, but the other thing that wasn't talked about is, over the past 5 years, people used to go to 4 car dealerships. Now they go to 1. And so think about how much information is now transferred to that upfront research and shopping behavior. So I would recommend for you guys, instead of using buzzwords of we do programmatic, we do targeting, we do blah, 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 we can reach your audience, we have the, try to look at where somebody is in that exploration and in that journey and in that shopping process, and tell us where you can solve a problem to get them to the next step.
Since I ended early, I'm going to do one more question, and then we're going to wrap up.
As you think about right message, right place, right time, what are you doing to ensure the in-dealer experience matches the efforts that you've made to lead the consumer there? So once a person walks in, what's the in-store kind of marketing their experience, and it's kind of matches all this great branding and great push to the location that you've done?
I'm sure we can all give our quick anecdotes. I will say that we take a lot of pride in how our dealers represent the brand. The Mini dealership looks quite different, perhaps, than other car dealerships. There's a vibe going on there that hopefully is in step with what the brand is trying to communicate and what the product is. I literally got an email this morning walking in from someone I met at South by, and he just told me about how amazing the experience was all the way through. And that, it doesn't surprise me. We get those time and time again. And what we're really trying to do is, people are investing a lot of money and a lot of time in deciding to purchase a car. And while it's true, a lot of people want the car delivered to them and all that, there still is this mechanism called the dealership where you're making the purchase, you're servicing your car, but you're also hopefully feeling like it's an environment where you feel comfortable and you feel excited. And we do certain things, even with we make sure that the music is at a certain decibel and there's a certain vibe going on. And our salespeople are called motoring advisors. And there's a culture that you should carry all the way through, and that's the point where somebody's actually making a decision. So, and some could argue it's the most important area for, quote unquote, getting the message right.
Yeah. I'd say for us it might be one of our single largest challenges. I mean, imagine yourself standing in a room giving instructions to 3,500 people and expecting them all to walk out and execute everything exactly the way you told them to execute it. It's impossible, right? So you're only as good as your best dealer on any given day. So I will say at this point, we probably have more invested into dealer training and resources going into the stores to help ensure that that online to offline connection is happening and helping build the pathways and the channels necessary to help the dealers, to help enable the dealers to pick up where we left off, if you will. But seriously, probably one of our biggest challenges, and will be for the foreseeable future. But we are putting them through what we call digital boot camps, and then bringing in tools and technologies and even consulting type teams to help bring them up to where we need them to be.
We have two different formats. We have our studios, which are our Fiat studios, and we take a lot of pride in that being a very different culture, a very different environment, and it's centered around design and style. With our dealerships that hold our core brands, to Tomoya's point, we're trying to give them the tools to help aid the customer instead of the other way around. So how do you market to them? What types of messages are you driving them to? And how do you get them into the dealership for that experience?
I will say one of the single biggest motivators for them is the fear on the landscape, right? So if there was ever a time they were going to change their business model, they know it has to be now because there are threats on the landscape that have never been there before, and that's all come from the digital companies that have set up shop, and they see that. So that fear can be a huge motivator, and I think that's helping them understand how huge the change has to be.
Right.
Great. Thank you, guys. Awesome. Really, really great panel.